Yo, welcome back. Yo, before I get into topics or anything like that, what do y'all think about that new song, that new intro song? I'm still getting used to it. I do like it. I'm just trying to figure out whether it's, suitable for this podcast, this genre, whatever. It's like when you hear that, do you think of dating? Well, when you heard the last one, did you think of dating? But I guess after listening to the last one like 98 times, well, not 98, because we went through the first 17 episodes without any intro music. So 17 minus 98, that's 81. So you heard it 81 times. So I guess you got a chance to get used to it. Whereas with this one, it's the first time. Give it a few listens. Let me know how you feel about it. I like the song, just don't really know if it's appropriate. That is God Mode, Secret Job. God Mode is the artist, and Secret Job is the song. But I like it. It'll play for now. Let me know. Keep me posted. And I will, well, I guess that was the start. I'll transition by saying, congratulations to me. Congratulations to Reggie. This is our 100th episode. And even though I didn't get Reggie on this 100th episode, it was more important to get him on the last episode. And yes, I am talking about that, Reggie. It was more important to get him on that episode because this episode is like more like, I don't know, just talking. The last episode was the episode that really mattered for all of you all that caught it. And that was the episode that felt more like an anniversary episode. We started this thing on October 30th, and a little bit over a year later, and 99 episodes later, 100th. Well, this is the 100th. 99 episodes later, we're still here. So shout out to Reggie. Yeah, that Reggie. And he'll be on. We, like I said last time we talked, he and I still talk regularly. And as you heard from him, he really had a lot to say. As you gathered from that last episode that he was on, he was in Reggie form. So it was good to hear that and get that energy, even though he's more zen and into his chakras and alignment and all that other stuff he was talking about. But that's my guy. That will always be my guy. And also, a lot of people got to hear from Gar, who I always refer to, Reggie always refers to. And so, yeah, so, and you got to meet P and Quay, who have been supportive from the jump, from episode 1 to now 100. They have been my people. I enjoyed having them on, and I hope to have them on in the near future because their marriage and relationship is something that is unique to my experiences. I spent a lot of time on this joint talking about dating, obviously, because that's the premise of the show, but oftentimes talking about some of the negative aspects, or most of the time talking about negative aspects of dating and relationships and marriage and stuff. I don't know that I spend enough time, or me, as in me and Reggie, if we spent enough time or spend enough time talking about the positives that come from relationships and marriages and things like that. Even, yeah, so it was good having them on, sharing their positive experience for as little as they were on, but I'm hoping to have them on so that I can really drill down, not drill down too deep because I don't want to get too personal into their business, but drill down just to get some insight as to what makes things happy. But that, you know, that goes back to the last episode. Hopefully you all caught it. And if you listen to all 3 hours and 30 minutes of it, I really want to thank you for that. If you downloaded it at all, I thank you for that and contributing to the overall numbers over these 100 episodes, but particularly that episode because it was the longest episode that we'd ever had. And that was the plan. It was just a free for all. There was nothing scripted. There were no topics that were discussed. It was just having people on and just kicking it and just seeing how it played out. And for you all that told 50 friends to tell 50 friends about the podcast, I appreciate you for that too. Or even if you told just one friend, I appreciate that. I'll take whatever I can get. And while I'm going back to that last episode, I just have to say that I'm talking about that was the longest episode that we'd had, but the actual raw recording was like 5 hours long. So that means that there's an hour and a half of that conversation or those conversations that we were having that's still sitting on the editing room floor, to borrow an old phrase. And the reason that an hour and a half is pretty much gone into the atmosphere. Well, it's not in the atmosphere. I still have it, but nobody will ever hear it. But the reason that it was chopped up so severely, I guess that's like a little less than a third that was cut out of that. It was because some of those conversations just went left, which naturally happens when you have a room full of people that you love and you have fun with. The conversations kind of stray. And so, yeah, it was just not necessary to include all of that stuff. Some of the conversations were also personal, and I was actually asked not to include it. And of course, if somebody asked me not to include something because they're feeling a little bit too comfortable, you know, those are my people. And even if they're not my people, if somebody asked me not to include something, nah, I'm not going to include it. Like, what's the point? And then honestly, there were some things that personally me that I wanted taken out. And that was the first time in doing these 100 episodes that I ever edited something out because I wanted it done. If somebody else asked me, that's one thing, but I had always been like, yo, if I put it out there, then it's meant to be put out there. Now, now, even when I do editing, it's editing stuff out like that doesn't make sense. Or if I say too much, or if I lose my train of thought or something like that. But usually the content portion of it is something that I just leave in just because, hey, I'm an open book. So whatever you hear is what you hear. Yeah. But it's funny though, because when you have the number of people that we had on the show coming in and out, of course, there are going to be occasions when things kind of go off the rails, which usually makes for good content. But in this case, another reason for some of the editing was because a lot of the stuff was inside stuff between us that you all as listeners wouldn't have understood, and you probably would have just been wondering like what were they referring to. And keep in mind that everybody that was on, Reggie, Jean, Gar, P, Quay, these are all people that I've known for at least minimum a decade, and in most of those cases multiple decades. So I didn't want to include references from 20 years ago that nobody would have understood. And then on top of it, like I said, considering the raw recording was 5 hours, just imagine how much longer it would have been if I had had to stop, interrupt the conversation to explain to you all, well, what he means by this is back in 1997, this happened or whatever, whatever. And you're like, I don't really, okay. So that's that. I also want to take this moment to apologize for some of the audio issues. There were some audio quality issues. And part of that was because everybody was on their own mic in their own stream. And so normally I'm able to modulate those things. Well, I was able to modulate it this time, but after all of that editing, I didn't feel like going back and doing the audio editing after that. So I was just like, hey, I'll put it out there. Hopefully it doesn't sound too bad. And it didn't sound as bad as I thought it would. But still, when you have a bunch of people on mic and they get excited, the decibel levels go high and distortion starts and blah, 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 blah. But with all of that said, it was a good time. It's always a good time when I have my people around talking about dating, relationships, marriage, all of that good stuff. So thank you all for listening. Hope you all enjoyed it and all of that good stuff. All right. Anyway, but while we were having that conversation, I took some things away from that. And I did want to speak a little bit more about, a couple of the larger topics that we discussed. And one of them is the idea of work, the work that's required in relationships, and how you just have to accept certain things about your partner. I guess those are the two things. And as the only unmarried person on that episode, uh, I didn't have the understanding that the others seemed to have, or I haven't accepted what they'd accepted a long time ago. And those things are the work and the acceptance required in successful relationships. And there's a saying that I always abided by that went that if you find a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So I take that philosophy into relationships. And I feel like if you find someone you love, you'll never have to work at that relationship a day in your life. Now, I know that sounds a little bit naive to most, and it might be more semantics than anything, but it's just something about the word work, as I like throw up my air quotes, that just has like such a negative connotation to me. Like, I like being busy, I like being productive, I like learning. And those are all things that can happen in the course of quote unquote work. But when you call it work, it just seems like something that you're obligated to do or not something that you want to do. It's do people really like to work? They like doing things, but do they really like to work? Or maybe it's just the view that I have of work. There are people that love their jobs, but they don't, if they don't see their jobs as work, then that speaks to my point about how work is seen as a negative that I just can't really a construct that I can't wrap my mind around. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's me. But obviously, there's a process that you go through when getting to know someone. And obviously, that process can include some bumps and curveballs in that process. I get that. But work, again, my air quotes, makes it seem like a whole lot of effort that you have to put into making something happen. And if there's so much work involved, my question is, should you be with that person if it requires that much work? I guess you should. I mean, P and Quay, a couple that's been together for 30 years was telling me that you should, and they're happy. So what do I know? I mean, my life is complicated enough. Actually, it's not really complicated. Actually, my life is pretty simple, maybe a little too simple at times. But the point is that I don't feel like adding extra quote unquote again work to it. I probably need to think more about the whole thing. But what really bothers me is that the work never really seems to stop. I'm thinking that relationships should be more like, should have more of like a AI, artificial intelligence approach, like a machine learning approach, where things get automated. You can pretty much like get to a point where you're on cruise control. Like these cars that can drive themselves around. I see the commercials all the time, especially with the holidays and all that mess. And I still don't trust those like self-driving cars myself, by the way. I mean, really, on a side note, if you have a car that drives itself and you put it on this auto drive mode, you might take your hands off the steering wheel, but how far are you going to keep your hands off the steering wheel? Are you really going to like put them in your lap? Are you really going to like lean back and recline and let the car drive itself? It's like, come on now. Come on now. Yeah, I'm not feeling that at all. I'm not feeling it anyway. Sorry, I got off tangent. But so my point is though, I like that cruise control approach. I like that whole like, set it and forget it approach or whatever you want to call it, where you get to a point where the relationship just pretty much works itself. And I can see, again, talking about a relationship, I can see if you had to put in that work in the beginning while you getting to know each other, then eventually, you settled into a groove and you didn't have to quote unquote work anymore. But it seems like you're always working. I want something easy. And when I think about work, I don't think easy. Like easy and work, they just don't seem to go together. And I can see some of you all, especially you all married cats out there, thinking I'm just like effing crazy. And I might be, and I could be part of the reason I'm single. Maybe I'm just like expecting too much. And I can't even knock it because I'm probably am. Maybe I am. I mean, there has to be a reason that I'm single. And maybe that's it. I don't know. And one more thing before I move on. I must have a misconception about all of this because I hang out with P and Quay all the time and I see how they interact. And I'm not even fronting. Like they were talking about they curse each other out and stuff like that when they argue and stuff like that. But they really seem to like each other after all these years. They be joking and talking shit and all that stuff. It's cute to watch in a disgusting way. But yeah, so yeah, but all they do is talk about work this and work that. Like the work never stops. And it just seems contradictory to me. But again, what do I know? Obviously, not to work in a relationship or how to work in a relationship to make it work. I don't know. Anyway, that brings me to the other part of the discussion that I don't feel that I'm confused about at all. And that's that whole thing about acceptance. The whole notion that you have to accept someone for who they are and just deal with it. Nah, I'm not feeling that at all. Now, that's the bigger issue than anything else. And I know we spend a lot of time on like talking about clothes hampers and if she put the clothes in the clothes hamper or she takes the clothes off and leaves them on the floor. But I'll just reiterate the point that I was making on that episode. If I'm with someone and she tells me that I do something that bothers her, unless it's something like breathing, I can stop doing whatever it is for the most part. I'm sure she's not going to say, like, I don't like the fact that you have all 32 of your teeth. But for the most part, if it's something like the examples that we were mentioning on that episode, if she says, I don't like when you do X, I can stop doing that. If it makes her happy, what's the big deal about my stopping doing that? Conversely, if she's doing something that bothers me and I bring it to her attention, I don't understand why she just can't stop doing it. Again, unless it's breathing. I mean, obviously. That just seems like the simplest thing to me. But on that last episode, again, everybody, except for Gar, Gar was cool. Well, they all were cool, but still, Gar agreed with me, so he's cooler. But everybody except for God was like making it seem like I was crazy if I wanted a woman to be ready on time, for example, or for a woman, I guess if you want a man to put the toilet seat down, or wanting someone to put their dirty clothes in the hamper as opposed to putting their clothes on the floor. That just doesn't seem like too much to ask. I just don't get down with that whole take me as I am mentality. And you just have to accept that because that's who they are. Really? Is that the hill that you should die on? I, I don't know. It just seems like those things are petty things. And while somebody might say it's petty for me to bring them up, I'll reverse that and say, well, shoot, it's petty for you to like stand on that hill. And so if it's that petty, why don't you just pick up your clothes or be ready at 10:30 when I say 10:30? Or I don't know. I don't get it. The first one, the whole thing about work, I agree that enough people talk to me about how you have to work in marriages, that there must be something to it. And I need to review my thoughts on that. But in terms of this whole just accepting this people how they are and this is me and all that stuff, nah, F that. I'm not feeling that at all. I'm not on that. And I would think that everybody should be willing to be customized a little for the sake of love. I might be, again, yeah, I might be crazy on the work thing, but not on this one. Anyway, I'm off that. I'm off that. I mean, you mean to tell me you really love someone? You are deeply in love with someone, and they are a solid person, and you are going to risk putting that love in jeopardy just because you want to take off your clothes and leave your clothes on the floor, or you want to leave the toilet seat up. You don't want to put your clothes in the hamper. I I don't understand. Obviously, it's not meant for me to understand. So there it is. But yeah, I don't understand. Okay, now I think I'm done. Anyway, no, I'm just joking. I think I really am done. Now, let me get back to this 100th episode and talk about the 99 episodes that have preceded this 100th. And I have to say that it has been a pretty cool ride. A ride that was cooler than, well, I would say cooler than I thought. When me and Reggie first started this thing, we had pretty big dreams of what this could possibly be. And still, even though Reggie isn't full time, still, it can be something. Hmm, Who knows? Who knows? I didn't think that there would be a whole lot to talk about for 100 episodes. But the cool thing about the topic of this podcast, and particularly the age and demographic that this podcast caters to, dating seems to be the gift that keeps on giving. And it seems like, whereas the natural inclination would be that it would give less to you the older that you got because you would be more introspective and settled in your life, that is not the case. It seems like the older you get, the more confusion you find. Like young people's stuff is just like petty, just like silly stuff. But old people stuff, like some of the topics that we've talked about, like divorce and cheating and 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 weight and health and all of the things that we've spoken about, even menopause and big guts and not being able to get your dick hard and stuff like that. These are all things that are unique to people in this demographic, things that younger people can't relate to or have to deal with yet. And even when you talk about things like when we covered the cheating episode, and for a young person and for young people, you think of cheating and obviously it's bad. No one's saying that it's not. But as Reggie pointed out when we did that episode, when you're talking about cheating, there's so many more variables as you get older as to why somebody might be prone to cheat, as opposed to someone in their 20s who might just see like there's some ass over there and that's really their sole reason. But cheating as you get older has become more and more nuanced. And over these 99, now 100 episodes, it was just interesting to talk about those things that are, if not unique to this age group or this demographic, but at least nuanced in a way that younger people don't necessarily understand. A lot of things when you're younger are a whole lot more black and white than they are when you get older. Yeah. So, and like I alluded to earlier, it is dating is the gift that keeps on giving. And that's not necessarily a good thing. I think they make for good topics of discussion. But considering that most of the episodes have tackled some kind of negative aspect of dating, like I talked about a little bit earlier, yeah, overall, we're all just trying to figure it out. But with that said, the podcast has persevered partially because, well, solely because there is always content, whether that is good content or bad content, is still something that's real in our communities. And I mean, our dating communities, and they cross cultural boundaries. Um, yeah, racial boundaries, even though I am Black and I think of things from a Black perspective. You know, the thing that's interesting about it is, as I've spoken to other people that's not Black, they can relate to it. So every race thinks the opposite sex is crazy in some kind of way, or at the least, they just don't understand the opposite sex. So, yeah, we persevered. And it was cool having guests on that I didn't have previous relationships to when I reflect back on the 99, now 100 episodes. It was nice getting to hear perspectives from like Abby, from the Social Matchmaking Club, and from Kimberly, the dating coach that I had on from Canada, and Lori, who had the book that I enjoyed, Dating What the Fuck. It was just interesting getting different perspectives from people outside of my circle and hearing things. One of the things that stand out to me about Kimberly and Abby was that when you talk to a lot of women, they can be hard on dudes, but they took more of a softer approach. Their approaches were more along the lines of more like it's just miscommunication, misunderstanding, misperception, and there's enough finger pointing and bad that can go both ways. And then to hear Lori's experiences and hear how she monetized her experiences and put it into a book. And just, yeah, if you're going to have those bad experiences over the course of however many years, hey, you may as well get something out of it. You should grow as a human being, and if you can get it, if you can get some cash out of it, hey, get that too. Yeah. So it's just nice to hear different voices that can provide different perspectives than just mine and Reggie's and the friends that we have in our group. And of course, that is not to diminish those people that have, it's not to diminish those people that have differences, that that are in our group that might share similar perspectives. I really did appreciate having like Pamela and Roni slash Tisha slash anyway. Erica, Reggie's sister, Mingo, when they were on the show together, that was a wild episode. That was the wildest episode. Yeah. And the stuff I edited out of that one, boy, I tell you what, shoot, that's something that that was on a different level. That was entertaining. But it was cool having them on, hearing their perspectives. And of course, Nicole, who, even though she hasn't been on a while, she's like our third co-host. She's, me, Reggie, and then Nicole. So yeah, it's nice having them on, and we'll see about getting them back on if we can. Their lives have taken on different paths. So I don't know if we'll have them on or not. Nicole will definitely be on because I'll drag her here, even if I'll drag her here if need be. So yeah, so we'll just see what happens over the next 100. Yeah. Also, and on a side note, still one of the most commented on episodes, at least people talked to me on the side about Pamela when she was on and she was talking about dick pics and how that episode started off as something completely different and it just turned into a whole episode about dudes sending women dick pics. Didn't expect it, but that was another cool thing about the show over the past 100. So yeah, so that's cool. And it's funny because in funny as an ironic or interesting, not even ironic, just interesting. It's interesting because when I was looking back at the numbers in preparation for this episode, surprisingly to me, the most listened to episode was the one about God. And when I say the most listened to, I mean it's not even close between number one and number two. And I went back and listened to that episode because I was like, wow, because I don't really check the numbers. I get a weekly update as to the number of downloads, but I don't go into the details unless it's for some occasion like this. Last time I did it was when we got to 50, and I did it again. And I looked at that and I was like, whoa, I was shocked. But I went back and listened to the episode, and it was interesting, if I may say so myself. The role of God in dating is the most important thing. And it's not a discussion that I think people spend enough time on. So that was really interesting. And it also spoke to, just the differences in how myself and Reggie view God. And yeah, and I guess it speaks to getting with someone who shares those same views, and how people feel like even if you do believe in the same God, if you don't worship him in the same way, that can be another sticking point. And yeah, it was really interesting. God's role in relationships is the most important thing. And that episode speaks to how important it was because, like I said, that show still gets numbers. And it's amazing to me that even though that show took place, I don't even know, maybe more than 6 months ago, still it resonates with people. And I get updates with new downloads on it even now. So I don't know who's going to listen to it, but I appreciate whoever is. And I appreciate those people that did listen to it. So that's cool. The second episode, the second highest rated episode in terms of downloads, was our very first one, which was entitled Why Men Don't Argue. And what was funny about that is that, well, one of the things that was funny about that is that that was actually our second episode. And I think that episode starts with me saying, Welcome back. And so people were like hitting me up, like, what are you saying, welcome back? But you're saying this was your first episode. What was the first episode? But the first episode was just so bad, me and Reggie thought it was, that we were like, nah, there's no reason to put this out. And so we just went with Why Men Don't Argue. And while I love the God episode, the Why Men Don't Argue episode to me was kind of whack. And, the first time that, as far as the first episode goes, the first time that you do anything usually isn't the greatest. And that was a perfect example. Back then, we didn't write anything down. We didn't script anything. We didn't even bullet point stuff. We didn't rehearse. We just kind of freestyled. And the idea was we were basing it off of our phone conversations, because when I call him or he calls me and we start talking about relationships, it's not scripted, but it just flows. But there was something that happened when you turn the mics on and turn the lights on that just didn't translate to our in our from our phone conversations to that episode. And while I thought that was a very important topic, and it's something that we may revisit in the future, and I think it should be revisited in the future, because even at this age and demographic that we cater to, it's amazing how people still argue and how people still can't argue in constructive ways. It still goes down these weird rabbit holes, and things are said that you try to take back later on, but they can't be taken back. This, and Pamela put it best one time when she said that it's kind of like when you have a glass and you say something that you can't take back. It's like knocking that glass off the shelf and it breaks into all of these pieces. And even if you take the pieces and you get some crazy glue and try to glue it back together, it can never be like that glass in its original form. And every time that glass breaks and you say those things that you can't take back, you're just trying to put that piece of glass back together for the 10th time, and it just looks worse and worse and worse. It's still being held together, but it's nothing like the original version of that glass. And I thought that was a very good point by her. And that's what I think of when I think about that Why Men Don't Argue episode. And so, yeah, we might revisit that. So we didn't really convey things in the way that we wanted to. And also, the other thing was, I had no idea how to edit back then. And so if we said something, it had to stay in. So we strayed off topic. We pauses, a whole bunch of ums and all kinds of stuff that just kind of ran all through that episode, that kind of distracted from the point that we were intending to make. So I don't like it at all, but still, it is our second most downloaded episode. Go figure. And it's the second most downloaded episode because it's a quality topic, because everybody argues. Everybody can relate to it. maybe not specifically why men don't argue, and that's what we were like trying to explain, but arguing in general, people know what that's about. Yeah. So that was the second episode. The third most popular episode in terms of download was the one on cheating. And like I said before, in this age and demographic that we're in, cheating can is so different than it was back when we were younger. And so I think a lot of people can relate to that as well, even though a lot of people don't necessarily see it as different. They just see it as, hey, if you cheated, that's all that matters. The reason why doesn't matter. The point is that you cheated. And to a certain extent, they make a point, but still, overall, if you really evaluate cheating, and you do a deep dive instead of just like saying I'm the victim and that's all that matters, you find that there's a lot more to it than just somebody had sex with another person. And that's the point that Reggie was trying to make in that episode. And so, yeah, so that was the third most popular episode. The fourth most popular in terms of downloads, and I'm laughing because I went back and listened to that episode, and that episode was What is Good Sex? And the reason I'm laughing about it is because I started off asking a simple question, and Reggie took that mess to the moon and Jupiter, around Mars. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, to be honest, but that's my guy. He was on a whole different plane. And what really is funny about it is that after the joint was over, and after the joint was over, he and I were still talking, and we were like just pretty much arguing because I was like, no, you don't understand. I wasn't asking for all of that stuff that you're talking about, like vibrations and shit. I'm just talking about physically what sex. And then after all of that was after we recorded all of that stuff and Reggie was all left with that stuff, we turn off the recording, we get into this argument, and then Reggie's like, oh, I get what you're saying. Why didn't you say that before? I'm like, you motherfucker. Anyway, so that was funny. I still didn't get the answer, but still I'm on a quest to find out. But that was the fourth one. What is good sex? I love that one. And then to round it out, the number five one was interracial dating in terms of downloads. Mm, yeah, I don't know. That really wasn't my favorite. That was something that me and Reggie had been talking about doing for like a long time before we actually did it. And then I think, I don't think, one other time we actually started recording the episode, but we went down a rabbit hole, and that we stayed in that rabbit hole for so long that we never came back to interracial dating. So we were always attempting to get to interracial dating, but we never got around to it until finally we were like, now we could talk about interracial dating. And then by the time we got to it, it felt like some of the steam had left. So I didn't personally think it was as good as it would have been had we recorded it when we first started talking about it. But still, to this day, it is our fifth most popular download. So thanks to everybody for that. Now, another component that I can talk about in this recap, and I don't mention it much, and the reason that I don't mention it too much is because honestly, YouTube is like an afterthought to me. And honestly as well, it should be more of a forethought than just your traditional downloaded podcast that you listen to in your car or wherever. I guess it's one of those things where what you do is what you kind of lean toward more. Like I'm a podcast dude. I'm a download to my phone and I put on my earbuds and I listen to podcasts. I was at Sam's Club this morning, walking around doing my Sam's Club thing, and I have my earbuds in, just listening to podcasts. I get in my car, listen to podcasts. That's what I do. But obviously, YouTube is not like the little engine that could. YouTube is the big engine that has. So I probably should be putting more emphasis on YouTube, but I don't. Guard's a huge YouTube proponent. Guard doesn't even download the podcast. He only watches through YouTube. So Yeah, but the numbers really don't reflect, you know, what I would like on YouTube. And they don't come close in any way to the numbers that we get on the actual podcast. So the downloadable podcast, I mean, like the numbers on YouTube are like just irrelevant to me. Now, with all of that said, though, there was one episode that I did entitled Marriage, Divorce, and Babyface that got numbers on YouTube that I just didn't even know existed, at least for me in this, considering how little I put into YouTube and how little people listen to YouTube compared, watch YouTube compared to what they download and listen to. But that one, for whatever reason, got big numbers. I don't know where the numbers came from. Maybe it's one of those don't ask, don't tell deals. I don't even care. I appreciate it. I like the episode, but it was just weird that all of those, I mean, out of all of the episodes, that was the one that really took off. I think that Malik Yoba joint where I kept confusing Malik Yoba and and Blair Underwood. That one got a lot of YouTube traffic. I guess people were like searching Malik Yoba and Blair Underwood and stumbled across my podcast on YouTube and was like, hey, let me give it a listen. I don't know. But those are the big ones, or those were the big ones when it came to YouTube. And that over the next 100, I'll probably put more into YouTube and all of that. That was a suggestion of Reggie's, and it was a great suggestion of Reggie's because Reggie is another person that is a big YouTuber. So yeah, it's one of those deals where I guess I need to, yeah, it's one of those deals where I guess I need to, well, and I guess I will put more into it. And also, along with that, I will spend the next 100 episodes putting more work into the Instagram page and all of that other stuff. I'm not too keen on putting up a Facebook page. I don't know. Maybe I'll go that route. I'll just let the universe lead me and I'll just follow it and see what happens. Yeah. But that's that. And that's the 100th episode. Again, there's 100 more to come, or at least that's the idea. I know that over the past few weeks, I haven't been giving you the consistency that I normally would, but there have been a lot of factors that have tied into that. And as opposed to some of these podcasts that will take time off and hiatus and all of that stuff, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go weeks or months between talking to you all. So the idea and goal is to get back to, 2 a week. I make no promises, at the least once a week. But either way, you're not done with me yet. There's more to come. I am excited. Things are happening, and I'm excited about that. And so, yeah, thank you all for coming along. Let me know what you think about the music. You feeling it? You not? You don't care, which is the case with me in most cases with music. When I listen to a podcast, I'm just like, can you get past us this 45-minute introduction into the content? And I'm sure that people are probably saying that about mine when they hear "Welcome to the Adulting Podcast" for the 100th time. It's like, but hey, you got a reprieve on the last episode. I just came on talking. There was no intro whatsoever, taking you back to the old days. Now you're back to an intro. Sucks. Just listen to my lovely voice and like it. And tell 50 friends to tell 50 friends. Thank you very much for listening. Whether you listen to 100 episodes or whether you listen to one, I appreciate you all. I appreciate the feedback. Reggie appreciates you all. He appreciates the feedback. Yeah. And until then, Reggie, you want to say goodbye to the people? Reggie, it's the 100th episode, man. Come on. Well, Reggie's not saying anything, so I guess I'll say it for him. So until next time, I will say goodbye to you all. Thank you. Bye.